Hello everyone, welcome to my Cyberpunk genre analysis video. This is one I've been working on for quite a long time, about 2 months now. The reason it's taken so long is it's just taken a bit of research for me to fully grasp and understand this genre, and what I'm really going to be talking about today is why it should kind of freak us out. There's quite a bit of variety within the genre, but I feel like its overall message and landscape that it puts forward, the recognizable stuff, is essentially all saying the same thing, and I want to really get into that in this video. So the majority of people that watch my videos actually aren't subscribed. Give me a like so the algorithm can recognize me. Give me a follow and then turn on that notification bell as well. Put a lot of work into this one. I really hope you guys like it. So if you want to see more content like this, check out my channel. I actually review films on the channel. That's kind of what this channel is all about. I have a couple of other buddies and we do film analysis videos for theater releases as well as fun tier lists, and then these film essays. So there's kind of a bit of everything for everybody. If you're into cinema and that stuff, go check us out. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. It is without a shadow of a doubt that the Cyberpunk franchise is currently one of the most compelling, visually stunning, groundbreaking, and disturbing dystopian fiction genres out there. We could do an entire video on the immeasurable effect that just Blade Runner 1982 had in the industry and how it paved the way for films like Ghost in the Shell, Akira, The Matrix, RoboCop, games like Cyberpunk 2077, and eventually its arguably better sequel, Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049. Its neon-lit, vibrant, rain-covered world has influenced just about every cyberpunk medium across the board, aesthetically, philosophically, psychologically, and atmospherically. Blade Runner 1982 mixed a blend of bright neon dystopia with mid-20th century noir, creating its own genre called future noir, or as others call it, neo-noir. Now guys, in prep for this vid, as I previously stated, I spent the months of September and October trying to consume as much cyberpunk fiction as humanly possible. Now obviously I haven't been able to consume everything, but I have spent just about all my free time reading and listening to books, playing games like Cyberpunk, and watching quintessential films regarding the genre, as well as other films that inspired its noir tenets. And I've had a blast doing it. This really is one of the most interesting genres out there, and it's just infinitely deep and complex. But what I really want to get into today is why exactly the genre is so appealing to its audiences, and because fiction mimics reality, I want to get into what the genre is really reflecting or trying to say to us. Now, there's a term called novum, which was coined by Darko Suvin, that essentially means the space between the world of science fiction and our own. And today we'll be discussing how the cyberpunk genre's novum is steadily shrinking. Because Blade Runner was the first film to spark such an interest for the future and how possibly damned we may be in it, I figured we'd find most of our questions and answers in exploring the two Blade Runner films. I know Neuromancer is equally as foundational, and the book is absolutely fantastic, but this is a film reviewing channel, so it feels more up my alley to stick with the film aspect of the genre more heavily, although I will be still referencing books and games that inspired and laid the foundation for the genre. That being said, the Blade Runner movies are just my personal favorite cyberpunk films, so there is a bias as well. Now, in my exploration of Blade Runner 1982 by Ridley Scott and Blade Runner 2049 by Denis Villeneuve, and the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, which was the inspiration for both films, I found that at its core, cyberpunk is an exploration into our eventual damnation. Which seems obvious, but this damnation was something that was already on its way while these older stories were being created, and it's something that's much closer and in some ways present today. And nothing will stop it. It will get smarter and smarter, quicker and quicker. All we can really do now is watch. The damnation of which I speak is technology coupled with corporate overrule and consumerism, and its rapid appetite. Of course, I want to be clear, I appreciate and acknowledge the benefits tech has brought. Its growth has obviously done humanity some tremendous good, and I'm not some primitivist who thinks we should live in caves, but anyone can recognize the obvious damning side effects that tech's rapid development has brought. Today, I'm not talking about me and my beliefs. I'm diving into what the cyberpunk genre is reflecting and or warning us about. Now, Blade Runner is infinitely layered with philosophical undertones, but something I find so ironic about the films and the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is that the replicants, or Andys as they are called in the book, feel and act more human than the remaining naturally made humans themselves, for the most part. I think the first Blade Runner film explores this perfectly. Rick Deckard is cold and detached and kills replicants, living things without question. Society calls it safety and the price to pay for humanity to have its slaves and uphold their way of life. Through the replicant Rachel, he's able to see differently and let empathy stretch to people in his world and line of work that he is told not to feel empathy for. And the story is essentially about what makes someone human is empathy. Problem is, in the world of Blade Runner, is there any really left? And is empathy in our world steadily decreasing as well? Now, in the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Empathy is quite literally dead. In fact, most emotions from people aren't even organic in the book. Everyone has what's called a mood organ that literally makes you feel whatever emotion you want, thus stripping humanity of genuine emotional reactions. Rick's wife in the book purposely makes herself feel sad so she can have some contrast to her unending artificial happiness. Now, what these films, and to be more broad, this genre explore is that consumerism and tech in our current culture are pushing humanity to become artificial like the very products they produce. The genre is an exploration to how much of our humanity we can throw away for a mere speckle of convenience at a time. Now, it's also important to know that Blade Runner 1982, directed by Ridley Scott, was heavily influenced by Ridley's disdain for Reaganism. Blade Runner is his nightmare of where he thought unbridled capitalism and trickle economics would take society, and how unregulated capitalism would lead to a dehumanizing corporate rule dystopia. What is the unbridled capitalism Reagan pushed for that Ridley hated so much? Let me give you one example. Things like the deregulation of advertising in the 1980s when Reagan opposed the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, for restricting advertising to children, particularly for sugary cereals and toys, because kids cannot distinguish between ads and regular content. Reagan cut FTC funding and authority, diminishing its ability to regulate advertising, and then he appointed industry-friendly officials who reserved many consumer protection efforts. And then he ended the KidVid, which was presented by the FTC, that would have blocked such ads to children. Now, if we look into the statistics around this time, corporations started advertising to children heavily. The results are rather grim. Let's take a look at how the soda corpos benefited from the Reaganist policies. Starting in the early 80s, soda consumption skyrocketed. Children ages 6 to 17 drank roughly 7 to 8 ounces of soda per day, or 3/4 of a can. By the late 80s and early 90s, that number had more than doubled to 16 to 20 ounces a day, or roughly 1.5 to 2 cans daily. Among teens, it was especially higher, sometimes 24 ounces, 2 cans or more every single day. A stark difference to the 5 to 6 ounces drunk on average in the 1970s. Unregulated Reaganist policy allowed for these powerful corporations to influence culture through advertising, telling kids and teens that soda was cool and hip, thus creating a generation and culture that consumed and became addicted to drinking 1 to 2 sugary sodas every single day. A habit that has lasted their entire lives, and one that started with every generation after. So next time you guys are on Cartoon Network and you see an Airhead, Gusher, Trix, or any other insanely sugary slop ad that's horrid for both you and especially your children's health, just know it's what the market demands. So shut up. Now, this is just one small example of powerful corporations using their power to exploit and manipulate their consumers, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of all the things that's happened since the 80s in corporate overrule. And that is what Blade Runner 1982 is really a reflection of. All right, now, agree or disagree that Reaganism is responsible for the current consumerist plague in America, but I'd say you'd have to be blind to not see that consumerism has indeed skyrocketed, and corporations and tech have indeed become more powerful.
Black Friday frenzy, an estimated 116 million shoppers hitting the stores. Bedlam in the aisles of some of the nation's biggest retailers, shoppers fighting over garments.
Obesity continues to be a growing concern for children and teens across the country, with new reports showing that rates have not gotten better. They've actually doubled over the past 20 years.
As we transition out of the last pandemic, we're entering a new pandemic of addiction. That might be the most pervasive addiction in human history.
The world's 85 richest people is equal to the 3.5 billion poorest people.
It's fantastic. And this is a great thing because it inspires everybody, gets the motivation to look up to the 1% and say, I want to become one of those people. I'm going to fight hard to get up to the top. This is fantastic news, and of course I applaud it.
Somebody living on
I celebrate capitalism.
$1 a day in Africa is getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to be Bill Gates.
That's the motivation everybody needs.
The dead landscape and hellish neon dystopia in Blade Runner is Ridley's vision of where Reaganism would bring society. Have we gotten closer or further to Blade Runner since the 1980s? Has consumerism slowed? We are without a doubt headed someplace dystopian, or are we already there? How small has the novum shrunk? Since the original Blade Runner has influenced every cyberpunk medium since its creation, I'd obviously and unintelligently say that the cyberpunk genre is a nightmarish view into all the places corporate overrule can and will eventually take us. Now, what frightens and fascinates me is that the organic, real humans in the Blade Runner universe are as cold, detached, desensitized, and shallow as the world they inhabit, because it's the world they created and allowed to prosper. And it's the things outside of the consent to this creation, the replicants, that start to bring humanity back, which I think is symbolic of the belief that humanity, or even some artificially made aspect of it, will always rebel against oppressive conditioning. Alright, now I want to get a little deeper into what these cyberpunk landscapes are really reflecting, because every cyberpunk medium has a unique landscape that's saying something different, but also very, very similar at the same time. So let's get into that. The cyberpunk landscape is one of the most recognizable things about the genre. We know it's a reflection of the effects of unregulated corporatism, but let's look into the specifics and variety of other mediums and see if they also provide dystopian landscapes in worlds that reflect where we may be headed as a society. Anime Akira displays Neo-Tokyo, a neo-capitalist political cesspool of a city overrun with crime and shady government that cares more about their political dominance than its people. So in result, Neo-Tokyo is covered in gang violence and constant political unrest. Cyberpunk 2077, the video game, is very similar to Blade Runner, but more focused on the corporation overlords and how they exploit the lower class. There are places like Japantown and Haywood that show the commodification of culture, stripping diversity of meaning, and selling it back as style. Neuromancer, which is equally as influential and foundational to the cyberpunk genre, is a nightmarish view into transhumanism and even post-humanism, the technical blend and mending of flesh, metal, and software between people. Its landscape is something of a cosmopolitan nightmare where things like culture don't really exist, but gangs instead. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep focuses heavily on the destruction of wildlife and humanity through nuclear war and fallout, making Earth almost uninhabitable. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which isn't really cyberpunk, but I wanted to include it due to its core story being about AI, and that's just simply very relevant at our present time. Harlan Ellison reflects a world where man is practically extinct, and only a few exist to be played with and tortured endlessly by a supreme AI named Am, who gains sentience and despises humanity for making him conscious, but unable to experience life due to his mechanic nature. A Clockwork Orange, which also isn't very cyberpunk-esque, but displays a political dystopia that is very relevant to today. Stanley Kubrick shows a world where everything is polluted, unorganized, ugly, dirty, and violent because its government is constantly looking for cheap, easy solutions for deep, complex problems of the soul. Ghost in the Shell also explores transhumanism, probably deeper than any cyberpunk movie I've ever seen, and terrifyingly explores when humanity and technology will be indistinguishable from one another, and if that's a good thing or not. Now, there's many more, but all of these worlds and landscapes are different, but display an exaggerated reflection of current real-world problems and how, if they remain unchanged, will become our eventual fate. Now, in all of these worlds, we see things like, get ready for some really fun buzzwords that you can Google the definitions of: insurrection, nuclear fallout, techno-feudalism, techno-capitalism, neoliberalism, AI takeover, anarchism, postmodernism, technocratic capitalism, nihilism, techno-libertarianism, transhumanism, consumerism, hedonism, tribalism, techno-accelerationism, nihilistic techno-fetishism, and post-humanism. They're all very present, real problems we see all over society today. Your homework, go Google what all those words mean. It's pretty fascinating, actually. Let's take a deeper peek at how things look in Blade Runner specifically. The cities are dark, wet, and dreary. The only light provided to be able to see is artificial and neon from an endless jungle of advertisements that pollute the city. Ads for things like Joy, a perfect AI girlfriend that's completely customizable to your liking. What the landscape really represents is a dead soul consumed with artificiality and void of genuine experiences, or a society of people who lack any form of theosophy. A technocratic world rampant with corporate domination. The streets are covered with people speaking unidentifiable languages, but things like Coca-Cola live on, showing how corporations will outlast nations. The people who remain are hedonistic cattle who only live to consume. It's a system that eats everything, constantly adapting. If it can find a way to buy and sell your soul, nothing will stop it from doing so. Sacrifice your soul for the artificial convenience corporations provide. What the system needs and wants is sheep that eat whatever they are given. Now, I want you to think about it honestly. How often are you able to be present in a moment today? How often are we able to turn off our minds and wonder without the pulsating urge to consume something that provides quick and easy dopamine? You feel like the human experience is becoming more and more present? Are people becoming less and less isolated? Think of how many things you used to experience that you simply don't anymore. The Blade Runner and Cyberpunk world reflect the dead space that we will fill our souls with. A barren landscape void of any human connection, full of dead thoughts and hedonistic impulses. A place where nothing is sacred and everything is packaged and sold. Joe in Blade Runner 2049 is the perfect example of what the system wants. An obedient replicant that has no emotions and fills the void of his empty soul with product. And what makes the film so damn good is that he eventually rejects it. Okay, now I'm going to say something rather obvious. It's the fact that being a human is hard. Being sentient is no cakewalk. It comes with a lot of baggage and suffering. Now, wouldn't it be sweet if something could help lighten the load? Isn't that what tech is for? To free us from things, to allow us to spend more time living the human experience? Yes, that is tech's proper function, but when coupled with the corporate-ruled techno-feudalist society, it oversteps its bounds. AI or porn is not meant to be a romantic sexual partner. Egregious consumption of sugary cereals, candy and sodas, or junk food should not be something associated with kids just being kids. Remember, addiction is never good, but it's exactly what they want you to be. Addicted to your phone, to food, to sports, to gambling, to porn, anything that can be packaged and sold. We need to reject consumerism and accept humanism. And that brings me to Blade Runner 2049, which I think directly gives a solution to one of the very real and present problems that almost every cyberpunk medium puts forward. We need to understand that we are responsible for our current societal issues. We can't just blame all the corpos or certain politicians or CEOs because we allowed and still allow them to exert such power over us. We spend hours upon hours scrolling on Instagram, gambling, eating, spending, so much so that we are blinded by what's sucking out our very soul. We need to be stronger than the product that's designed to enslave us. Now, I'm not advocating to never buying materials or things ever again. I'm simply showcasing the damning mentality of the consumerist ideology and how the cyberpunk genre does the same. What these films, books, and games show is that the system sees us as nothing more than cattle. Corpos armed with technology is on its way to steal the human experience and pollute it with something they can put a price tag on. And we will buy and sell because it provides us a little piece of convenience at a time. It slowly eliminates our suffering, but in return numbs our soul and makes us no more sentient than livestock. So what's the answer? What does Joe in Blade Runner do? He rebels against his conditioning. He accepts that to be human is to stoically suffer, and that suffering adds context, meaning, and value to his existence. He dies for a cause he believes in. Looking to live a life void of any suffering is childish, and I think the very idea is something that feeds the consumerist mindset. And I don't mean suffering only akin to like physical pain, but I think of it as discipline as well. It's pretty easy to warm up some ramen or Egos for dinner and requires basically zero work and will taste okay. But imagine spending the time to learn a recipe and to go through the suffering that involves failing and learning to do something. That provides true dopamine and gives you a reason and passion to live, and that mindset is something the consumerist can't comprehend. The consumer wants every tasty, easy, and damning shortcut to living, and the passionist learns, loves, and ultimately suffers because it's the most human thing he can do. Be like Joe. Deny the void and addiction of consumerism, reject the zombification of your brain, and embrace what it really means to live. Find passion outside of product, build relationships, strive to critically think, enjoy even the hard parts of life, and constantly search for what really enriches your life and your soul. Know what it means to be human and what it means to be enslaved. Now, of course, this is more the spiritual solution. And that answer might seem silly, might seem a little stupid, but I promise you, if we adopt this mindset as a culture and as a society, if we reject the never-ending horde of just hedonistic impulses and entertainment and constantly searching for just the easiest route to do things, it will benefit society in a way that we can't comprehend, and it will put us in the right direction. But even still, this may just be half the solution. Who has the other half, you may ask? I don't know. Maybe ask this guy.